The Winter War by Priscilla Shirer with Gina Detweiler. Chapter 29, Turn for the Worse. Day 39. If you recall, there's something about 40 days, so we're on day 39. Levi was in math class listening to Mrs. Brayburn's monotonous commentary on the isosceles triangle when the principal, Mrs. Loomis, appeared in the doorway. Everyone stopped what they were doing and sat straight up in their chairs. The principal had that sort of effect on kids. Her towering height, her severe hairdo, and her thick glasses that masked her eyes made even the toughest bully quiver. They all wondered which of them had done something to incur her wrath today. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Mrs. Loomis said to the math teacher in a tone that didn't convey any sort of sorriness. Then the principal turned her attention to the classroom. "Levi Arthur, can you come to the office, please? Bring your things with you." Levi felt his heart drop into his stomach. All the other kids turned to stare at him, some with sympathy in their eyes, others with relief. He stuffed his math book in his backpack, got up, and walked slowly to the front of the room until he was within a few feet of Mrs. Loomis. Without really looking at him, Mrs. Loomis turned and walked out of the classroom. Levi followed. She stayed in front of him for the long and terrifying walk to the office. All the while, Levi wondered what he had done to deserve this. Mrs. Loomis was probably the most unfriendly principal of any school in the universe. Levi wondered why she had even gone into a career in education in the first place, because she really seemed to dislike kids. She was always making announcements on the PA system, denouncing the students' behavior and imposing new and stricter rules. Her latest was to make everyone, even 7th and 8th graders, walk in single file on the brown line to the cafeteria, like a bunch of kindergartners. She even had a brown line painted on the floor, and she instructed the hall monitors to send anyone who veered from the line to her office for detention. In fact, you could get detention for even the smallest infraction, like being 30 seconds late for class or failing to turn in homework on time. Levi had been late a few times, and lately he had not been able to finish all his homework. Was that why Mrs. Loomis had called him to her office? Mrs. Loomis opened the main office door and waited for Levi to go in first. He could feel her eyes following him as he did. Then she breezed past the secretaries and led him into her private office. She shut the door behind him. Levi took a quick look around. The office was dominated by a large desk that was swept clean of everything except a computer and a can of pencils. There were 2 chairs in front of the desk and one on the other side. A large fern, half dead, sat in a planter by the window. Beside it was a goldfish bowl with the biggest, ugliest goldfish that Levi had ever seen swimming around inside. A bookcase covered one wall, filled with books, but with no family pictures like most people's offices. Levi suspected Mrs. Loomis didn't have a family at all. Maybe she ate them. "Sit down, Levi," she said. Levi went to sit in one of the 2 chairs. To his surprise, instead of going to the other side of the desk, Mrs. Loomis sat down right next to him. Levi flinched slightly at her being so near. He kept his backpack on his lap, as if in defense. "Your mother is coming to pick you up. I'm afraid your father has had a setback and had to be taken back to the hospital." "What?" Levi thought he might faint. The room seemed to spin. Mrs. Loomis took off her glasses, which were attached to a chain around her neck. Levi was surprised to see that her eyes were brown and almost kind. I'm very sorry, Levi. I've notified the attendance office that you might need some time off in the next few weeks. They'll help you keep up with your schoolwork. She paused. If there is anything I can do to help, please let me know. Levi nodded. Thank you, he said. You should probably go and get your coat from your locker. Your mom will be here soon. And Levi, I am really very sorry. Levi nodded and did as he was told. Mrs. Loomis was waiting for him at the front counter when he returned. She had put her glasses back on. I'll walk you out, she said, in a gentle voice. Levi walked beside the principal to the outside door. Before he went out, he turned to the principal. Thank you. You're welcome. Levi raced down the steps to his mom's car. As soon as he opened the door, he knew that she had been crying. He got in the passenger seat and closed the door, trying to quell the rising panic in his chest. What happened? I had to call an ambulance. Your father was unresponsive when I tried to wake him up this morning. What? But I thought he was getting better. Me too, Levi. They had to put him on a respirator. A what? It's a machine that helps him breathe. Levi's mom drove like a NASCAR racer to the hospital. Mr. J.R. was still in the emergency room when they got there. Levi approached his dad's bed, noticing that a tube had been put in his mouth. His face was taped up, and a big machine was next to him. The breathing machine, he thought. Levi wanted to cry and scream and throw himself on the floor. He was so angry, though he didn't know who to be angry with. His mom went to talk to the nurse. Levi put his hand on his father's chest, feeling it rising and falling rhythmically with the machine. Wake up, he whispered. Don't leave me. I need you. Mr. J.R. didn't respond. Didn't open his eyes. Help me, Ruach, Levi pleaded silently. Help him. Make him well. He waited for an answer, for his father to wake up. Nothing happened. He glanced through the curtains and saw that a man in a white coat had joined his mother and the nurse. His expression was grim. Levi heard snatches of their words, including the word coma. Coma. Another word Levi didn't like. He turned back to his father and bent close to his ear. I won't leave you, he whispered. I'll be right here until you wake up. Dr. Arthur returned to the bedside. They're going to move him into ICU, she told Levi. That's the intensive care unit. I can go too, can't I? Sure, Levi. His mom went over to him and hugged him. Levi saw that her eyes were wet with tears. Orderlies came to move his dad to the ICU. Levi stayed at his side. A nurse brought chairs for him and his mom. Levi stared at his father, wanting to be there the moment he woke up. He even refused to go to the cafeteria for supper. His mom brought him a sandwich from the vending machine. Levi was eventually lulled to sleep by the rhythmic gasps of the respirator and the beeping monitors. He dreamed he was in a Hortos, climbing that mountain with Xavier again. Only this time, neither one of them could keep their footing, and with every step, they slid farther and farther down the mountain, and then fell into a dark, cold, bottomless river. The sensation of sinking into that river jolted him awake. It was the middle of the night. The ICU was dark. and the only light coming from the machines and monitors around the patient beds. His mom was asleep in a chair on the other side. Levi got up and went over to his father's side, putting his hands over his father's hand. The hand was warm. He stared at the closed eyes of Mr. J.R., willing them to open, to look at him, to assure him that he was all right. Then he felt a warmth on the back of his neck and turned. There, hovering in the air before him, was the crest, glowing golden as a star. No, he shook his head. I'm not leaving my dad. Go away. He turned back to his father, but the crest appeared in front of him again. Go away, he said aloud. The crest continued to hover, growing larger, so that he couldn't avoid it no matter which way he looked. Okay, fine. He took his father's hand and held it between his own. I'll be back soon. Wait for me. Then he reached out and touched the crest.